Recently, I've been thinking about beginner guitar lessons and exercises, specifically the ones that I was taught when I was first learning to play. Oftentimes, I was given a shape for a chord, a scale pattern, and these exercises were great for muscle memory, but oftentimes there was not a lot of musical context around them. So I thought to myself, is it possible to make real music out of beginner guitar lessons and exercises? And then I thought, if I could do that, why not share them with you to help you with your own musical growth? So in this series of videos, we're going to start with the open position chords, starting with the D and the A chord. I've organized this video in a couple of sections. First, we're going to go over the fundamentals, in this case, the D and the A chord. Then we're going to listen to a track that I put together using those chords. Then, I'll break down that track for you to show exactly what I'm playing. And finally, I'll give you some practice tips and advice to get these things underneath your fingers. Let's get started. Before we get to the musical example, I wanted to show you the two chord shapes that we're going to be using in today's song. If you're not familiar, this is called the neck of the guitar, and going across the neck, the metal wires are called frets. It's also important to know the names of the strings. The string closest to you is the low E string, then you have the A string, the D string, the G string, the B string, and finally the high E string. Sometimes I'll also refer to these strings by their number. The low E string is your 6th string, 5th string, 4th string, 3rd string, 2nd string, and your high E is your 1st string. The first chord that we're going to look at is the D chord. And to me, it kind of looks like a triangle. The first thing though is we want to start with the 4th string open, which is the D string here. Then we're going to put our first finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, or the G string. And it's important when you're fretting a note not to be on top of the metal, or you're going to get a buzzing sound. You want to be right behind the fret itself. Then your 3rd finger is going to go on the 3rd fret of the B string. And then finally, your 2nd finger is going to go on the 2nd fret of the high E string. So all in all, this chord should sound like this. And again, you're strumming from the 4th string down. The next chord we're going to look at is the A chord. The A chord is going to start with the open A string, which is your 5th string right here. Then you can put your first finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, your 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, and then your 3rd finger right behind it on the 2nd fret of the B string. You can strum it starting here and down. Now I'm going to tell you, this is not a very comfortable way of playing it, and most players don't play this way. If you look at this shape, it's actually everything going across the 2nd fret, so why not just use one finger for that? This is called a bar. You're going to be barring your finger, which is laying it flat against the fret to get all of those notes in one shot. But you're still going to keep the open A string here. But now, you can play with just one finger across those strings. It's important not to put too much pressure because you don't want to kill your fingers here or hurt yourself, but just enough pressure to get all the sounds to come out clear. Okay, those are the two basic shapes that we're going to use. Now let's go listen to the track. And after that, I'll break down the track for you to show you exactly what I'm playing. Okay, so that's not going to win a Grammy, but it is at a good slow pace where you can practice switching your chords in between. Hi, I'm Joe, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you don't mind, please hit the subscribe button down below. Now let's go ahead and break down this track. There's two parts to the song. The first part is your D and the A chord that you learned previously, with a little bit of a twist. I'll show you that in a second. For now, you're just going to finger your D chord like you did before, and strike down. The song happens to be in 4/4 time. Basically that means there's 4 beats per measure of music. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And what you're going to do is hold that D chord for 3 beats, and then we're going to add the suspension to it. And all we're doing to add the suspension is we play our D chord, and right behind our third finger, if you put your pinky down on the 3rd fret of the high E string, you're going to get a sus4. So what that basically sounds like is this, which always kind of wants to resolve back to the D. So, your normal D chord for 3 beats, 1, 2, 3, and then on the 4th beat, put your pinky down. Back to the D. So it's like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you're going to go to your A chord and basically do the same thing. So your A chord, we're going to bar it this way. So in order for me to get that suspension, I'm going to take my 2nd finger and put it down on the 3rd fret of the high B string. So, and then resolve it back down. So again, it goes like this, the part. D for 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, sus. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Now go to the A. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So it's sus. Back to the D. And that's all there is to it. If you haven't noticed, I added a little tremolo effect. Hear the sound, how it wobbles? If you can add a tremolo effect, it's great for parts that are kind of long like this, where you're just holding a note. It adds a lot of motion and movement to the music without making your part too complex to actually play. So that's the first part. Let's go ahead and move on to the second part. So the second part is a little bit different. It's a little bit higher up on the neck. And you're probably saying to yourself, Joe, I didn't learn those chords. Well, kind of, you did. It's the same 2 shapes that I used for the D and the A, but I'm simply moving them up. That's all we're doing. So it's important when you're learning these shapes to understand where the roots are, because these are movable chord shapes. So, as an example here, we had the D. And if we just take the top 3 strings, the middle string of the top 3 strings, which is now your B string, that's where the root is. That's the D. Okay? If we take that and we move that up to A, we now have an A chord using the same shape. The only difference is we're no longer playing the low D string. We're leaving that alone. We're just playing the top 3 strings. So this shape, D, moved up, is now an A chord. Same shape. For the D chord this time, we're going to do the same thing but use the A shape that we learned previously. So for the A, we had this, where we had the root as our 5th string. We also have the root underneath the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. That's also the A. So if we take this A and we move it up to D, which happens to be on your 7th fret, and use that same bar shape right across and only use those 3 strings, we now have a D chord. Same shape. But again, we're not hitting the low A string anymore. So this part starts actually when the A chord comes into play in the progression. So instead of actually playing the chord, we're going to play an arpeggio, which basically means instead of playing and striking through all of the strings at the same time, so all the notes of the chord ring out, we're actually going to play each individual chord tone by itself. And I'm starting backwards and raking the pick upwards. So we'll start on the high E string with our D shape and come back. And And again, we're only playing these 3 strings. That's all we're worried about for this part. And we're going to do the same thing when we get to the D chord. We're going to flatten our finger down. Now starting with the B string, working our way backwards, we're going to hit those 3 notes. So the whole part kind of goes like this. To the D chord using the A shape. And then back to the A chord, but using the D shape. Who's confused? I'm confused. No. So that's how it kind of works. These are movable chord shapes, which is nice. And it allows you to play different chords just knowing 2 shapes. Now part 2 starts on a little bit of a different beat. It doesn't start on the downbeat, which is the first beat of every measure. That's called the downbeat. It actually starts on the second beat. You would count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the same thing for the next chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's basically the second part of the song. Let's go ahead now and move over to the practice tips. Let's talk about what to practice. Before you do anything, please make sure that you tune your guitar. It is so important to tune your instrument. Not only are you learning how to play an instrument, but you're also training your ears how to hear music properly. So when you have your own ideas, you'll know exactly where to go on the instrument to get them out. And having your guitar in tune will help you with that tremendously. So I'm going to put a couple links in the description below to some tuners that I recommend. In true transparency, these are affiliate links, and yes, they do help support the channel, but that's not why I'm sharing them with you. I really think they're an invaluable tool to get you started and get your ear training started correctly out of the gate. Once your guitar is in tune, really memorize those shapes. Get them underneath your fingers. When you're playing each chord, play each note individually to make sure that each note is ringing true. If they're not, usually one of 2 things is happening. You're not putting enough pressure down when you're fingering those chords, or the finger is arched over and it's hitting the string before or after it and it's not allowing it to ring through. So check your fingerings, play each note individually so you can hear it clearly. While you're practicing these chords, make sure you're starting to memorize where the roots are. In the description below, I'm going to put a link to my site where you can download for free those fancy chord charts that I flipped up on the screen when I was showing you those chords earlier, just so you can understand where the roots are and just memorize those, because that's where it's important to understand where you can move them up and down the neck. Now, once you have those chords down, practice switching between the 2 chords. So maybe do 4 beats of the D, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then switch to the A chord, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then start to build up your speed, where you can maybe even switch every beat a different chord. So maybe do D 1 beat, A 1 beat, D 1 beat, A 1 beat. Just going back and forth so you can become fluent switching between them. It's so important to build up your dexterity to do that. And while you're practicing, make sure that you're using something to keep time. Start slow at first and then work your way up. Also in the description below, I'm going to include for free the track that we used in this video, so you can actually play along with those drums, and I'll also put a track that has both guitar parts on it too, so you can practice the actual parts of the song as well. Lastly, I want to share this with you. Learning an instrument takes time. It's not an overnight thing. So make sure that you dedicate time every day to practice, even if it's just 10 to 15 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes every day is better than doing 1 hour a week and skipping the rest of the days. Why is that? Because you want to build up the calluses on your finger, you want to build up the muscle memory. Spending time and putting your hands on the instrument is just so much better to do on a daily basis, because it really will help things to sink in a lot quicker than just doing it every now and then. So I encourage you to commit to some sort of practice schedule. And again, at a minimum, if you can just get 15 to 20 minutes in, that'd be great just to get started. I think though, what you're going to find is as you start to get better and better, you're going to want to play more and more. And that time is going to start to increase. But if you can just start there and commit to that, that'll be fantastic to get started. That's all for now. If you found any value in this video, please support the channel for free by subscribing below, hitting the like button, and knocking on that bell. It'll mean a lot to me, and I really appreciate your support. Until next time. And basically what that means is there's 4 beats per measure of music. I think I just spit. And we'll play the D chord with the A shape. Ooh, this is confusion. It's hard to explain. 3, practice switchly. Practice switching between those two chords as much as possible. Oh boy. Switchly, making up new words.